Good morning, and many thanks for inviting me to contribute to your day. I'd just like to start by introducing myself and my interest in this area of activity. I was until last year chair of the CAUL Performance Measurement and Quality Strategy Group, which has since been absorbed into the remit of the new Transformation Group, who are looking more broadly at all activities related to library value, impact and advocacy. This is an interesting development, and I'd like to share my views on why CAUL no longer has a group dedicated to performance management at the end of my presentation, time permitting. Delivering a presentation in this way feels a little odd and disconnected, and this is my first time at doing this, so please be kind, and I hope you'll find my reading voice not too boring, and I'll try and pace it so that I don't drift off too quickly. So to kick off, I'm going to look briefly at the growing attention that the current government in the UK is giving to demonstrating value, in inverted commas, by universities. Then a brief look back at a couple of JISC-funded projects on library analytics and how they've been absorbed into the current programme on learning analytics. And finally, how my service at Edgehill is capturing user feedback and using data to inform future developments. And if I don't run out of time, I'll summarise some of my thoughts at the end. So, moving on. In November 2015, the UK government published its Higher Education Green Paper, Fulfilling Our Potential, Teaching Excellence, Social Mobility and Student Choice. This stated that its, quote, core aims are to raise teaching standards, provide greater focus on graduate employability, widen participation in higher education, and open up the sector to new high-quality entrants. It also contains a proposal to introduce a teaching excellence framework. In the absence of any agreed definition or recognised measures of teaching quality, the government is proposing to use measures or metrics as proxies for teaching quality. Therefore, the challenge is to identify those metrics which most reliably and accurately measure teaching quality, as opposed to other factors that contribute to the results achieved by students. It is generally acknowledged that the existing metrics, our National Student Survey and graduate employment data, are not by themselves proxies for teaching quality. So the government is in the process of launching a technical consultation to gather feedback and views on potential metrics, both qualitative and quantitative, perhaps identifying links between teaching, retention, progression and attainment, which is where the concept of learning gain sits and where potentially libraries will have a key role to play. In simplest terms, learning gain looks at the relationship between the qualifications and level of skills that a student has on entry when starting their degree programme and latterly when they graduate. The impact that libraries can have on student attainment was the subject of two significant JISC projects, which I'm just going to touch on next. I just want to reflect on the importance of these projects from a 2016 perspective, given that this project in particular started in 2011. Funded by the JISC, these projects focus specifically on the role libraries can play in supporting student achievement, and in particular how use of library resources might be a key determinant in student degree outcome. The initial project spanned 8 universities and therefore provided a statistically robust sample to demonstrate the correlation between attainment and library activity. The project received, somewhat unusually for a JISC project, and in particular a JISC project with a library focus, quite a lot of media attention and comment, and I believe was successful in raising the profile of academic libraries within the context of student attainment. Of course, libraries have always been seen and regarded as a good thing, and diligent use of library resources and services will always improve a student's chance of success. But in aiming to draw a correlation, the role and impact of the library in adding value became a focus of attention. Phase 2 of the project focused solely on Huddersfield University and gathered a broader spread of data, including information on student demographic, discipline of study, retention rates, on and off-campus use of the library and its resources, breadth and depth of e-resource usage, and it also included entry tariff points. So to some extent, the Huddersfield project embarked upon identifying learning gain. The findings from the project were broadly in line with the earlier findings and further confirmed that a correlation exists between library activity and student attainment. The success of this project led to a second one during 2012 and 13, known as the LAMP project, and I suspect familiar to many of you in the audience. The project itself benefited from having as its JISC project manager a post holder responsible for, and this was his job title, library futures and scholarly communication. The project manager, Ben Showers, who again may also be known to you, has also recently published a book of edited chapters on library analytics. Although I'm not here to provide a resume for Ben or a character reference, I do believe that having someone who so clearly saw the potential of analytics prompted an early recognition by the JISC of the contribution libraries could make as a key data source when reviewing student attainment. Although the LAMP project itself appeared to stall towards the end of the funding, this was, I'm sure, in part due to the realisation that to move it on to the next level, that would require significant investment and development. It did, however, succeed in demonstrating the feasibility of an analytics tool and raise the profile of the potential contribution libraries could and should make to the growing interest across the UK HE sector in learning analytics. So this now brings us up to the present day, and the current JISC programme of work and the learning achieved through the LAMP project has been fed into the design of this programme, and the contribution of libraries continues to be recognised. The programme itself is over 1 million in funding, and its aim is to provide a number of pilot institutions with a basic learning analytics tool, free of charge for the first 3 years. Each pilot will be customised to local institutional needs, dependent on their priorities. For some, this may focus on retention, for others, progression, or more broadly, student engagement. The programme team are also developing resources to support the uptake of analytics, in particular guidance on some of the trickier issues of boundaries, privacy and data protection, and have provided the sector with a template to draft local codes of practice. In the early days of this programme, CAUL was identified by the JISC as a co-design partner, and I have absolutely no doubt that this was in part recognition of the progress the LAMP project had made in demonstrating the importance of library activity. So the JISC has been out to tender for all of the various components for a learning analytics solution, including the development of a student app. The wireframe on the left simply illustrates the relationship between the various suppliers and the products that they have been asked to develop. And at the bottom of the wireframe, there are 3 key sources of data identified: student information system, the virtual learning environment, and the library. On the right-hand side, there's an illustration of different types of data that might be used to assess student engagement, both static and active. If any of you have read the recently published From Bricks to Clicks, not the other way around, which has been written by in the UK by UK Commission. Activity data in that publication has been renamed fluid data. However, moving on from nomenclature, this is a list of potential data sources, and there will be obviously others, which will be used to build up a picture of a student's level of engagement with their learning environment. and some of their key behaviours that illustrate good, poor, indifferent, excellent engagement. This data will then start to populate a dashboard. This is an example of how that data feeds a dashboard taken from Nottingham Trent University, who along with the Open University have made significant progress in the use of learning analytics outside of the JISC programme. The data on the right hand side will feed the dashboard. The data itself will be weighted and can be compared across a cohort of students. Its aim will be to provide personal tutors with additional intelligence about each student and to present an opportunity for a targeted conversation. There is no intention for this dashboard to become an alternative to face-to-face interaction. Indeed, it's designed to supplement face-to-face interaction, to target support more effectively. It's far too early to confirm the success or otherwise of this tool, but early indications from Nottingham Trent University, who wanted to use the dashboard as a means of improving retention, of identifying students at risk and ensuring that instead of withdrawal they were retained on their studies at university, are positive. However, I think we probably are looking at anything up to 3 to 5 years worth of data in order to really realise the valuable contribution of this activity. Now moving on to Edgehill and what we've been up to. As a service, we've always been keen to trial new approaches, not least with the goal of maintaining our visibility and raising our value within our institution. We are fortunate to have within Learning Services a range of professional teams, and so we've had many opportunities to work on cross-service projects with different stakeholder groups, both within our service, external to our service across the university, and externally in terms of benchmarking. I've just highlighted 4 areas of activity, and I'm going to say a little more about the middle 2 in the next couple of slides, and just touch on the first and the last here. So starting with the first one, we continue to use surveys to capture large bodies of evidence. We run a student e-learning survey every 2 years, and in the alternate year, we run one aimed at academic staff use of teaching and learning resources, services and systems. These offer us valuable evidence and trend data, which would undoubtedly be difficult to obtain using other methods. If anyone in the audience is interested in reading our latest report, please do drop me an email. The other activity, number 4, looks at the impact our one-to-one support has on student perceptions of their learning gain. The capture of this qualitative data provides us with evidence that these interventions are making a difference. And this is then fed back to academic departments and through our deliberative committee structures, through to our learning and teaching committee and our academic board. So we are demonstrating clear value in terms of our interventions, in terms of our support to student attainment. And it is evidence-based, and it is looking specifically at practical activities that students feel more confident in undertaking pre and post the intervention. So focusing on the middle 2, I just want to touch on our use of UX, or user experience, in learning services. We first tried, or I should say trialed UX back in 2012 when we were initially redesigning our website, and we undertook some basic usability testing at that stage. However, later in the same year, an opportunity arose to restructure our customer services division, and a learning spaces team was introduced, who, as well as managing the spaces in terms of functionality, aesthetics and housekeeping, We're tasked with developing techniques to monitor usage, activity and customer behaviour within the library. Various approaches have been trialled. We've used time-lapse video, diary mapping and non-participant observation. Whilst the use of ethnographic stroke UX techniques in the library started out as an additional project, they are now fully embedded into the work of that team and have now been adopted by other teams across the service. Last year, we tried using some of the techniques on our newly reconfigured online systems. We had introduced a new library management system, we had changed our discovery tool, and we'd customised our VLE, which is Blackboard, after securing funding for the Blackboard Community Engagement System. So having undertaken quite significant changes to our online end-user interfaces, it was important to us to find out how our students felt about these changes and how effective they were. So we undertook some usability testing, and this is what we did. We chose to use a methodology called concurrent think aloud technique. Not surprisingly, it encourages people to talk through their actions as they're undertaking them, their feelings, frustration, joy, disappointment, etc. The participants were a cohort of new health students, and what we wanted them to do was to try to find information and resources that any new student would typically need. So, for example, reading list, timetable, some lecture notes, announcements, notifications, settings, room bookings, subject resources, referencing, all within our virtual learning environment. The testing was facilitated by one staff moderator who welcomed the students, told them about the purpose of the study, how the data would be captured and used, and asked them to complete consent forms. As I mentioned, the students were encouraged to think out loud, as much as possible, to say what they were looking at, what they were trying to do, and what they were thinking within limits. Their on-screen activity and their commentary was recorded using software called Screencastify, with webcams and mics, which allowed the wider project group to observe what the students did and said, where they succeeded, where they had difficulties with the user interface without being present during the testing exercise. Each student was given approximately 30 minutes to complete 10 tasks, but there was no optimal time limit or guidance given, and the students were free to work through the tasks at their own pace. This gave us a first-hand insight into how students manoeuvred their way across our site. The findings were fascinating. This is a summary of the findings, presented using a RAG score. On the left-hand side, you can see that we benchmarked our success criteria against effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction. And where we've identified areas for improvement, they were principally around where we had located library resources. Some of the actions that we undertook were to really simplify the navigation route between and within the systems, using plain English. It seems simple, but actually we drop into jargon ever so quickly. And we also realised that instructional information in terms of text, the message was less is definitely more. Having taken these actions and hopefully improved on the experience for our students, we are now currently rerunning some of these similar exercises with a different cohort of students to see whether or not we've improved their experience. And finally, I just want to touch on a project that is work in progress. This is to assess mobile usage in our physical spaces within our libraries. It is work in progress, but its methodology illustrates, for me, the growing maturity in our use of a range of techniques and activities to provide both qualitative and quantitative data, with the aim of assisting us in making decisions about how we should be adapting our space to meet student needs. We have focused principally on our undergraduate students as they are the largest users of our spaces. Of course, this isn't an exact science, and student behaviour today and their use of mobile devices is not necessarily a reliable predictor of future behaviours. But we believe our approach is comprehensive, and if you look at the number of different techniques we're employing, I hope you would agree that is the case. And it should therefore provide us with some valuable insight and intelligence into occupancy and how we may in the future remodel our existing and potentially new library spaces. So in summary, thank you very much for listening. I think it's clear that there is a growing focus on measuring learning from a government policy perspective and from an institutional perspective. There is a real drive to use data more effectively. And that in itself has perhaps led to the interest and support for the development of institutional learning analytics tools or solutions. And there is a clear opportunity here for libraries to contribute to this and draw attention to their value. Within UK academic libraries, and in discussion anecdotally and otherwise with my peers, there's clearly a growing confidence in how people are trialling different approaches to capturing evidence, and the use of UX has sparked some creative approaches. And finally, I did say at the outset that I might have a few comments on why CAUL no longer has a specific strategy group focused on measuring performance. It isn't that I believe it's no longer a strategic priority for CAUL, but I think they believe that there is evidence that it has matured and is now embedded into many library practices, and that the focus should be on a higher level, should be on advocating the library more broadly. So hence, that is the focus of the work of the Transformation Group. So thank you very much. I hope you found something of value in this presentation, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the day. And so goodbye from sunny Ormskirk in the northwest of England. Thank you.